Hi, and welcome to Decoding AQ, helping you to learn the tools, mindsets, and actions to thrive in an ever-changing world. Hi, and welcome to the next episode of Decoding AQ. With me today, I have Ronen Olshansky. He's joining us from LA. And in fact, he's one of life's just great humans. He has a rich and diverse career that spans Wall Street, management consulting, executive coaching, and entrepreneurship. He's the founder of Cross Campus. It's a Los Angeles-based provider of on-demand workspace and business event space. He's also a partner at Ferrazzi Greenlight since 2020. And Ronen has been helping growth companies and their leaders elevate their performance. And in fact, I got to know Ronen through another business that he co-founded called Beyond Connections. And it's a program that I had the pleasure of joining him and Keith at the graduation dinner. In fact, just this weekend, I've landed back today from LA. So welcome to the show, Ronen.
Thank you, Ross. What a wonderful intro. I think that's the smoothest, most eloquent, beautiful intro I've heard. So appreciate that and appreciate having spent time with you this weekend. It was quite special.
It's mutual. It's mutual. And I know you love to deep talk over small talk, right? So I wonder if you could grace me with the honor of starting our interview with something called the sweet and sour, perhaps just sharing what it is, you know, why it works, what you've witnessed the power, and then maybe your sweet and sour as well, Ronen.
Certainly. I would never ask you or anyone to engage in small talk because we all know, we've experienced, and you know, the data shows people really like to go deep, even with people they don't know, even quickly. It's quite fascinating. So why not just jump in and create that beautiful emotional contagion that surrounds vulnerability and opening up in a trusted space? It feels great. It gets us to a place where we can really connect, really get into it. And our time is limited, so why waste it with small talk? The sweet and sour is wonderful. We use it when we coach teams. It's a great way to open up a session, give people the chance to share what's going on in their lives so their teammates know. It also builds trust, right? Vulnerability is that great stepping stone, as you well know, to trust, which leads to all sorts of wonderful things, better accountability and better results. So the sweet and sour is simple. What's one thing that is sweet or positive or working well in your life, and one thing that's sour or challenging? And by the way, I use this with my children at our Friday night dinners. I'll say, I'll use the prompt of let's do a sweet and sour on the past week. What this past week was sweet and what was sour. So you can use it in all sorts of forms. Let's start with my sweet. My sweet is that tomorrow, my family, I'm using that term consciously, I guess, maybe for the first time, me, my girlfriend, Julia, my two boys and her two boys are going on an adventure, and it's the first adventure we're going on together as a family. And we are going to an island off the coast of Los Angeles called Catalina, where we will be camping for 4 days. And it's quite a special relationship that we built here, where we brought together our two families, obviously our children. It's really what I dreamed about. We in the US have a film or an old TV show called Brady Bunch. I don't know if that has crossed over into the UK. Do you know the Brady Bunch?
I do know the Brady Bunch, yeah.
I guess a divorced man and divorced women bring their families together. I'm sort of living the Brady Bunch. So that to me is very, very special, very rewarding. There's a lot of love in the family. So that's my sweet. More interestingly, though, my sour, what is challenging in my life right now? I guess my sour is balancing two things I'm very excited about, Ross. One of them is the coaching that I do with executives and with teams. And I've consciously taken that down to focus on Beyond Connections on this program. And seeing the results come out of this weekend and seeing the outcomes, there's no question in my mind we're onto something, and I want to really dive in and invest the time and the energy. At the same time, I struggle with the relationships I have with people that have depended on me and still depend on me for support, direction, love, co-elevation. And it's hard to marry a startup with really anything else because a startup is so all-consuming. So that's my sour. That's my challenge.
I think it is a challenge. You said, can you do anything else with a startup? And I guess for me, that leads perhaps a little bit to some of my sweet, actually. in terms of finding, or is it finding? No, I think it's choosing to create. How do you integrate things that you care about with a startup world and a startup life? And I'm very excited, and something that's sweet is making the commitment to go out to Bhutan. And that was an opportunity that came as a result of yourself and Keith, an event that's happening in October, an innovation forum to go out to Bhutan. And I'm really excited what a great opportunity to go and do that, experience that, contribute, share, learn. And the sweetness will be the commitment that bringing my wife to do that, to join me. And we, a few years ago, made this decision consciously to do more things together that's in my world of my startup, rather than, oh, that's the thing I go and do, and I go and do all these things. That how can we do some of those together? So that is definitely a sweet right now, is the planning, the commitment to doing those. And a quick sour, because when we were, just in our quick setup here for this call, I said, oh, Ronen, are you up for doing a sweet and sour? He says, yeah, of course I am, as long as you are. And I went, oh, okay. So my sour, if I'm trying to be just you and I here rather than all the listeners. And if you and I were just in a room and you'd ask me that, I would share what sour in my life is a challenge between my father and his brother. Going through a real challenging time where their relationship has broken down. And any breakdown in a family relationship spills into beyond the people that are just in the intimate, breakup and challenging situation, because you want to support, you want to show up, you want to maintain, you want to protect, you want to grow, you want to contribute in all of these different ways. And there's, polarity in that split. And I think that for me, I find really challenging to see that that's happening, to witness my father having gone through some real health challenges and now going through some relationship challenges that have unearthed very deep things that have lived with him since he lost his father when he was 9. And that's, really the biggest challenge I'm facing right now in my life, I would say.
Thank you for sharing that.
And, coming back to this principles, and you mentioned about building trust and doing this, you've done this lots, right, in your sessions and with teams that you've witnessed. And I'm curious as to, where did it come about? What was the sort of embryo and creation? Did it evolve into this framing and phrase, or is it just something you always did but just didn't name it? What was the sort of origins of it, Ronen?
That's a great question. I mean, certainly, Ross, we can't take credit, Keith and I, for this as sort of a novel idea. Vulnerability has had its renaissance over the last 10 years. Brene Brown and others have unlocked sort of the power of vulnerability, which really is the rocket ship to connection. It's the strongest emotion as far as this concept of emotional contagion. If I'm happy and my facial expressions and my emotional valence communicates that, you'll be happy. Sad, you'll be sad. But with openness and vulnerability and sharing struggles, that connection really happens very quickly and consistently. And there, by the way, there are a lot of different versions I've heard. Rose and thorn, or rose, bud, and thorn, which is a nice variation. Rose being the sweet, bud being a new but exciting thing in your life, and thorn, of course, being the struggle. But it's one of these things that, of all of and we call them high return practices in Keith's business at Ferrazzi Greenlight. When we coach, we have accumulated this library of HRPs, of high return practices that we have seen demonstrated and work with high performing teams, whether in our research as a research firm or in our coaching. And we'll reuse those with teams. And this is one of the core high return practices that a lot of things are built upon. And it's simple, but it's multidimensional in its value. So from the first moment I met Keith, I've been doing sweet and sours, and in many different forums. Again, anytime people connect, if you think about it, you and I meet and connect, right? We spent a lot of time in the program modeling and role playing and scenario, participating in scenarios where you meet someone new. You have many different decisions about how you approach that interaction, whether you feel safe, whether you don't, whether you're on guard, how much you like the person, whether you want to talk about work or personal. And the journey we take from that first point to wherever we take that relationship is our own personal journey. And some of us are quite masterful at it, and some of us are not. Some of us get stuck or choke or get intimidated. But any path you go down, if you think about it, simply starting with hey, I'm going to share one thing that's going really well and one thing I'm struggling with, and why don't you do the same, is such a wonderful, it creates such a wonderful foundation if you do it right, and if you lean into that vulnerability. It's quite powerful.
It takes a lot of courage for people in the world that is this glossy facade that we often tell the story to the outside world of sharing the things that are good and that, we want to be maybe perceived as or judged by. And to get to a state where you're able to feel okay being, judged, seen, heard, to something that's not perceived as, oh, so it's going great, is quite difficult, isn't it? I think, and perhaps it's like a muscle that you build up, somewhere where you can do it in an intimate setting, one-to-one, maybe with a team, but to do that publicly is another level. Even myself, I feel in a happy place interacting with other humans. That's something I've continually work on, continually invest in, continually seek feedback to become better at it. But as you said, many people, it's not a comfortable place and feel really awkward to that. These kind of high return practices are interesting. And throughout, I'd like to just give a bit of tapestry to your career of where you've perhaps grown some of these techniques, because a lot of where we get to is the relationships we build and the connections we build, right? And from, Wall Street through to, island life, to, surfing, to all sorts of different things. Give us a few thoughts of how you've navigated your own identity and adapted your own self story of who you are when you say, oh, hi, Ronen, so what do you do? That's kind of a story you all have to figure out, isn't it? And I guess you've had many.
Wow, what a beautiful and complex question. So let me try to answer it in a relatively succinct way without doing a stream of consciousness. I was born in a small town, Ross. I was born in a small town, and from there, it's always difficult to synthesize one's life in that framing. But from a young age, my parents were immigrants twice around, from Ukraine to Israel, from Israel. I went to many different schools, moved around a lot. So I think maybe I built up a natural resilience. I was also younger than my colleagues. I skipped a grade in school. I did quite well academically. I went to college when I was 16. And I think I always, when I think about myself as a young man, there are two things that stand out to me. One is I was as far as I recall, always quite open and honest about who I am. It just felt good to share that. And my framing was, if it turns some people off, okay, if it upsets some people, fine, but it's also going to attract the kind of people that I want to attract. And it just feels good to express who you are. The other thing was I always had a very high appetite for risk. I was very risk loving, as we say in economics. I was risk loving, I was risk seeking. And so it was Wall Street to opening a bar in Brazil in my 20s on an island, to living in London, to working in Moscow when I was already married, leaving Los Angeles to do a stint in Moscow. And so I think that's shaped my persona, my identity. I've had all these different jumps in my career, and as you well know, in the second half of our career, as Carl Jung calls it, in our second adulthood, we ideally step into who we really believe we want to be and we should be as human beings. And oftentimes we get the opportunity to go from doing to learning and coaching and guiding. And I certainly enjoy that. I love mentoring. I love coaching. Coaching just feels wonderful. I'm able to pull together and synthesize work that I've done in half a dozen industries, all the data points and all the pattern recognition. So that's kind of what's brought me here today.
And that sort of culmination of you talked about balancing you'd more say traditional clients that you work with, one-to-one coaching, team coaching, elements with Greenlight Ferrazzi, the new exciting sort of startup of Beyond Connections. Why did you start that? What was the yearn for that you wanted to work on? What did you want to solve?
Yeah, great question. Ultimately, I think if I'm really honest, the yearn is that as much as I do enjoy coaching, there's still a part of me that wants to operate and run a business, and maybe sees myself doing both. And I think one can do certainly more than one thing. At this early startup phase, it's pretty all engrossing. But I did want to. I really loved founding Cross Campus. That was my first real foray into creating community. We created Los Angeles as the largest startup tech community. We had a sitting president, President Obama, visit Cross Campus, a huge honor. We grew and flourished as a business. And I wanted to build something again. And I saw this incredible opportunity with what Keith has built over the last 2 decades to do that. Keith wrote a book that was foundational to business, to sales, to relationships. It's called Never Eat Alone. It's changed a lot of people's lives. It's really impacted a lot of people around the world. And we saw an opportunity to bring that book into a live cohort experience and really share not just the ideas and the insights, but let people practice in a loving, generosity-based, co-elevating environment where they can build relationships while practicing these new approaches and tools and techniques. And you saw the result of that. I mean, after 8 weeks of that and creating this intentional container, the depth of connection was pretty mind-blowing. So
I think it's a real important observation, just the value of cohort-based anything, activity, learning, these things. We have theories and concepts that articulate themselves in a variety of ways. It can be a book, it can then be this online learning course, etc. And you get excited about it, you do the things, and life happens, work happens, things get in the way. And the element of bringing community into that through a cohort of that intentionality means, I've got to show up now, or I've got to make sure I do my stuff. And of course, then you'll see the results and it perpetuates. And I think for me, the biggest highlight was just how in that short space of time, 8 weeks, meeting a few people in a Zoom box to then going and spending some time, who'd fly halfway across the world for a dinner? Well, quite a few people actually. And then when you're doing it, the sort of self-organizing, so many people were putting on other events, wanted to really get to know each other, hang out, spend time with each other, and those morphed. And you wouldn't do that if you didn't care about those people and didn't understand them and want to help them. It's a bit like, a mutual friend of ours, a performer, musician, I was saying, I'm coming out to LA. Do you want to meet up beforehand? So we were sorting out meeting up. Little did I know on the graduation dinner, he was going to be there as well. And he messaged me to say, do you know what? I've had 35 people from that dinner with Keith that have said, yeah, I want to help you with his Grammy run and these kind of things. And I don't think, I haven't experienced a room quite like that, as you said, that depth of willingness to go out of your way to help another person that you don't really know that well. Incredible. And that's happened quick.
Let's spend a few minutes on unpacking this, because I think there's a lot of things. So first of all, 40 out of 65 participants in this program flew out to Los Angeles. If you had asked me, Ross, ahead of time, my guess, and I'm a betting man, I'm a Wall Street guy, I was looking at 15 to 20, and I would have bet money on that, right? Halfway around the world, these are people. Yeah,
Singapore, India, these aren't small trips.
Right. Cohort-based learning is fantastic because you're not just learning from the instructor, you're learning from everyone else. And by the way, I learned a ton. I mean, you saw some of those things that were posted in our learning management system. They were extraordinary. Why don't more people do it? Well, look, let's face it, right? And let's be honest about this. It's very easy to just bang up some videos and charge $99 for them, or 99 quid, and call that a business and hope you're doing great in the world. And some people will buy it and benefit, and many people won't. I like to do hard things and it's not necessarily a great thing, but I take on challenges, and I always have, whether it's opening a bar on an island or building a business. And when I started this, I knew it was going to be very, very challenging to design and run a program like this. There were so many elements to it. There was one-on-one coaching. There were live sessions. There was recorded content that I had to record from Europe when I was traveling, which was just, you saw how difficult it was. There's this online forum. There are all these pieces, and they had to come together in this experience. And they did in such a beautiful way for a first program. Let's keep that in mind. It will get better and smoother as we go on. So it's hard to do that, but when you do, the results are extraordinary. And I think that's what we experienced. Going back to something you said earlier, Ross, it's worth noting, we didn't run a very heavy curation process in choosing these people. We didn't sit with a team with photos on a screen and say, well, Maciek is from Poland and he's an entrepreneur, but we didn't do that, right? We didn't do that. To some degree, the community self-selected based on knowing Keith's work and understanding Keith's philosophies, of course. So they were bought into those principles. But beyond that, we did a very light application process where we had an enrollment call. We said no to some people we didn't think would be accretive to the community. So then it leads to the question of, well, how did we create that level of intimacy and depth? And I think there are multiple different answers. And now with a team and I are kind of synthesizing and digesting it.
I think it's easy to underestimate the pre-work that's often unseen. You can't perhaps see the level of pre-work that light to you was light because you felt it was light because you do deep work, you like to do it well and do it well. Well, actually, you're building on decades of an ability for a sixth sense of somebody. You don't necessarily need the pitches up, the debate of those things. You will be able to do that relatively quickly. So I wouldn't underestimate that element, together with what you mentioned of the self-selection of people who've orbited around a model of something, a book or a person or something like that helps in some way. But I'd like to kind of link this to leveraging what next for you. So you're going through your own series of adaptations, going from, I'm this person. Now I'm living my next phase of duality to do several things. And Beyond Connections itself will go through many phases and chapters, right? As many people's businesses do. What's next for you in terms of the specifics of scaling and the types of changes you think you might need to make in order to reach those changes and those goals?
That's a great question. That's what I thought about first thing in the morning when I opened my eyes. For me, Ross, one of the most exciting and interesting parts of growing a business is assembling incredible people around me. I just love that. I feel like I've gotten better at understanding how people fit into a culture and a team. And I think as we get into this stage of our lives, and I'm saying this as if you and I are of similar age, let's say in our 40s, I sort of look at myself, certainly compared to who I was in my 20s, as low ego, high compassion. And as a leader, that's the magic. That's the magic sort of combo. There it is. It's compassion. Yeah, we need more of that in the world. And look, it's worth mentioning, I didn't create this experience in this program on my own. I have an incredible cohort of coaches who you've met, program staff, people who helped me design the learning experience. And for me to really take Beyond Connections where I believe it has the potential to go, I need to enroll and motivate and inspire people to help me build this. And not just my team, but the community of participants, yourself and the 65 other people. And that's really where our head is at right now, is answering this question of what next, but not sort of broadcasting that, but co-creating that with the community. The next cohort, which I'm super excited about, will launch in late September, will have 150 participants. So it'll be interesting to see how that scales from 65 to 150 and how we maintain that intimacy, which we will do. And we will absolutely bring people together in person, because one of the lessons we learned from Los Angeles, and this goes back to your question of like, we're scratching our heads, well, why did people fly halfway around the world? Was it to meet Keith? Maybe. Was it to meet me? Maybe. I think more than anything, it was because they had built such intimacy and gotten to know each other online that they just needed to meet in person. They needed to cement that bonding in person. And so we will continue meeting in person, whether it's the dinners like the one you went to in London or larger, Beyond Connections gatherings. So right now it's sort of a combination of like bringing people into this abundance and having them help me birth this beautiful thing, and also formalizing the next experience, which is less than 2 months away. I mean, snap of the fingers, it's going to be late September, and I will be meeting another 150 extraordinary human beings.
It's a interesting part, isn't it, between I have this vision of the the caterpillar or the worm where the head moves and then the tail's got to move with it type thing around cohorts, in terms of the the energy that builds you up to that main event, big event, and then how do you keep the tail coming along, i.e. past cohorts, still maintaining some kind of engagement and being part of it, rather than, oh, I went to that was great, and then it fizzles. And I think a lot of not just communities, but even teams suffer from that, right? You need the next project to rally around. And without a project, how do you maintain that rallying and that rally call? Then little silos of, oh, I got on really well with Magic and this person, and hey, we'll do a little bit, but what is the collective? And I have a few ideas that, even building our own community that we've been experimenting with, things like co-ownership, for example, in terms of allowing some of our partners not only to come and be part of it, do the work, learn our philosophy, our thinking. Ours happens to be adaptability and how that's leveraged, yours connection and how that's leveraged, is to give them opportunity to buy into it, buy some shares. And for many of them, they're not angel investors. They're not people who have a portfolio. Some do, but most of them don't. And so it created an entirely different level of commitment by them feeling not just, oh, I'm involved in the advisory board or client advisory board, my voice is heard, or I filled out a survey to help it. No, I've put some money into this and I want it to see it work in the world because it helps the world be better and humans be better. And I know you're very open to a variety of things. Is that one of the things you've potentially played around with in your mind?
It absolutely is. It absolutely is. We are raising a friends and family round to fund the growth of this business and to really take advantage of this opportunity. And in fact, Keith mentioned it over the weekend, and I thought it was a great idea. And so we've decided to put aside a chunk of ownership for exactly that. And angel investing is wonderful, and it's great for people who haven't done it and talking about small amounts. But the idea and the alignment you get from people owning a small piece of what they're building is quite wonderful. So that's one idea. We've got others that we're working on. I'd love that. We should probably have a separate conversation.
Yeah, we'll share, right? That's what all of the co-elevation and co-creation is about, right? And it's similar in some ways to option pools, right? For employees to be able to be part of it, and co-ops. And we have John Lewis here, a big entity that everyone has, that works there, options as part of it. And there's all sorts of structures. And I think it'll be interesting to see what evolves, right? What you figure out, what you experiment with, what works, what doesn't work.
Yeah, it's always been my philosophy, and this isn't every entrepreneur's philosophy, but of inclusive ownership. So even when I ran cross campus, it was important to me that every single employee had a piece of the company, however small. Whether they are someone who cleans our facilities or, my CFO. Not everyone sees it that way, but I certainly do. It just feels right to me. And the other thing to mention is I can only do so much as a founder, and I'm actually looking for a co-founder or someone to sit by my side who has the knowledge of community management, community building. It's not my strength. It's not my strength, right? You have to know your strengths. There's enough for me to do to build this enterprise. But I've done this so far. I mean, Keith is definitely a partner in content and a partner in thought. He is so incredibly busy with the responsibilities he has. I've kind of been a solo founder building a team around me. And as you know, that can be very lonely and very challenging. So finding that balance is great. I want to come back to something really quickly, though, if I may, that I think you'll find interesting. To go back to the program for a minute, there were 4 outcomes, and this falls in the category of like things that we hypothesized versus how they played out. It's very fascinating, right? When you build a business, when you launch a product, you're basically testing a lot of hypotheses. And a lot of our hypotheses actually played out, which is quite interesting. But this is an interesting one. There are 4 general outcomes that people came for. And I'll tell you what they are. And you tell me, I think I might have shared them with you at some point. You tell me which one you think was the most important to people when we surveyed to least important. So most important outcome to least important outcome. You ready for this? All right. First one, I need a system and an organizing system, processes, tools to manage my network. I need something to help keep me organized. Tell me what to do, when to do it. 2, I want to bring new connections into my network. I want to meet new amazing people who I can co-elevate with. 3, I want to be more comfortable and confident interacting with you depth consistently. And 4, I want some mindsets and strategies that help me be more effective about the way I think about networking. Those are the 4.
It's interesting because I wonder if, for me, when I think about that, what I was attracted by in the beginning versus what I then would evaluate at the end is probably different.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I don't know what I don't know when I'm going in, right? So as I go in, whatever's a issue for me, either a burning platform or a burning ambition. Okay, I'm overwhelmed. I need a system versus no, I want to expand my network, or I want to make more of my current network and just be more confident in reaching out. I think it was a blend of different things. If I think about now, what have I come out from the other end of it? The mindset shifts, the systems, the systems and tools for me personally are great. There's lots of those, but it was more around, creating new connections that are valuable and being able to repeat that and repeat that through the combination of mindset and systems and things. So I'd be fascinated to, from the results, because I know we did it fairly recently, didn't we, that survey, what the actual result was, Ronen.
So mindsets and strategies overwhelmingly came out on top. I mean, a large percentage of people, that was their number one, interestingly. And you're right, ex post versus ex ante, right? After versus before, totally different. Number 2 was system and tools. Number 3 was better interactions. And number 4 was new connections, which is kind of interesting because people came away from it with so many wonderful new connections. So that was quite fascinating.
It is, isn't it? And I guess, coming to the reality of who, we had a real eclectic mix of people that were leaders inside organizations, coaches, all sorts of people that were coming to this. And I guess as organizations are trying to figure out a lot of change, right? AI technology, I'm sure you're doing the same when you're thinking about, who do I surround myself with? I need a person to do community stuff. I need this because I have a skill gap or a desire gap or whatever it may be as I scale my business. There's also the thought now of, what technology or what software do I bring in to do some of these actions and tools rather than a tool that a human uses? We're now evolving our thinking that the tools themselves can be doing some work, right? Smart agents as we get to those levels. And I'm curious, perhaps this blend between the Beyond Connections and some of the work you're doing with your own private, clients and coaching and consulting and things, and maybe with Keith, is what are leaders struggling with most in organizations, and how do you see the link between what you're doing and what they're struggling with?
Wow, not there, Ross. That question.
You know me.
I know you. I'm getting used to the multi-part questions here. If it's okay, I'm gonna
start with what are they. Yeah. Which one do you want to bypass?
I'll bypass the AI. I felt like there was an
AI. Yeah. That was part of the conversation of thinking. But the question at the end was, what are the leaders in the organizations struggling with most, and how is that connected to the work that you're doing?
Yeah. That's a great question. So let me, and again, this is something I'm thinking about a lot. Let's start with first principles. Let's start with things that we know. We know, Keith and I, because we've coached teams, that the relationships among the leadership team are much more indicative of success than the average competency or intelligence or skill level of any one person on the team, right? A group of somewhat average, above average people working really well together will beat out a bunch of stars who don't work together well. We also, this wonderful piece of research, I tried to find it for the program. I couldn't find it for the life of me, but that indicated that the biggest determinant of your success in a new company or in a new role within an existing company is your ability to build connections with people outside of your function layer. So identifying the people that make things happen, the people whose names you hear often, and giving and co-elevating and connecting and building relationships. So relationships, as general as that term is, sit at the heart of business success, leadership, et cetera. We improve beyond connections is an experience that improves people's structure, system, techniques for building deep relationships consistently, easily, in a way that's enjoyable. So it must fit into the rubric of learning and development within an organization. Today, I think and we're starting, Keith and I have obviously relationships in the HR and the talent space. We're starting to have these conversations with L&D leaders, and it doesn't fit squarely within their purview today. There's so many other things that they need to prepare their employees for. But I suspect that the more conversations we have, the more the light bulb will go on, and people will understand that, we're preparing people not just to have better relationships with teammates. Interestingly, by the way, you spoke about earlier, you hinted at the personas in the program. What are the personas? The biggest persona, Ross, were mid-career manager, director level professionals. Generally the participants in this course were in the second half of their career. And so these are people who want better executive level relationships. These are people who want deeper relationships with their clients. It was one gentleman captured it pretty well. He said, I have really deep relationships with my friends, and I have clients, but I don't have deep relationships with those. Why not with them, right? So depth of relationship with clients, with partners, with direct reports is what I think we are solving for. And
there's two areas I want to touch on in terms of I slid AI in there earlier in the conversation, thinking about how it might take on some tasks. And there's a potential risk of it then reducing human interaction and human relationships, or maximizing, multiplying, and enhancing human relationships in that.
$1 million question.
And I'd like to unpack that a little bit with you. And then if there's any specific, you shared during this program so many great strategies, elements of technology, things to help us do just that, right? To use technology for good, i.e. build better relationships. So perhaps if you can unpack that a little bit around your thinking of AI, friend, foe, how do we make sure it's friend to do this kind of good work?
Yeah, I mean, look, Ross, there are much smarter people than I who have the AI. No one has the answer, but at least the signal or their finger on the pulse. In designing the course, Keith and I had a point of view, And the point of view was, and this was one of the reasons we found this program to be so exciting, particularly today at this point of our history. One is you have the ability to get on a Zoom with a click of a button and meet anyone in the world. Let's just stop for a second and think about how freaking amazing that is. So now, I mean, you have the tools. And what do you do with that? What do you do with that person? But you didn't have that ability as recently as 5-6 years ago, where if you had said to me, let's get on a video conference, I would have said, are you a back-end engineer? Are you a computer programmer? Well, what do you mean video conference? Why, right? That's one. But with AI, the point of view here is that if you fast forward a year or two, maybe even less than a year, many more of our interactions will be with agents, not with carbon-based human beings. And I believe that as realistic as they will be and as wonderful and as effective they'll be at fulfilling whatever role that AI is fulfilling, they won't be fulfilling from a sort of spiritual, emotional, heart standpoint. And we will crave human connection more than ever. So we're preparing people for that.
I agree. I'm a hugger. I like to be in physical space as people. That hug can be just a meter apart, or it can be an embrace, right? In terms of the frequency of energy that you feel from somebody is totally different when you're in the same space. And it's, I'm so glad it was part of the program to build that in, to have an actual physical element to dinner and other breakout dinners of those things. And I think that's the same where, we're working with lots of organizations that are still trying to figure out hybrid working, return to office mandates, all of these things. And it's often lost in the practicalities and not the human spiritual, kind of just fulfillment. It's around, productivity, and we've got to do this kind of positioning. And we're almost, I think, what I've witnessed is fearful of talking and allowing that at a corporate level. And it's one thing I've been, as an observer of the work that Keith has done, has blown in the face of that a lot, where it's potentially taboo in other rooms to have those kinds of settings, that he's created a very unique position of doing it. And I think that is a wonderful thing, and ever more important to do so as we're potentially more and more polarizing with technology to do things of that.
You mean specifically, Ross, physical contact? Was that what you're referring to? That type of
physical contact or physical spaces held.
Right.
Held in a way that isn't about just doing the job, doing the work, but is about hearing, seeing, and listening to another human being, that is difficult to do remotely, and not impossible, but difficult. So I think, as an observer, you only see what you see, right? You don't see inside the system sometimes, but that's something that has certainly resonated. And it's what attracted me was the human side of it, as much as all of the other strategies and techniques and all of those things, is that I wanted to be around other humans that cared about humans, basically. As simple as that. Yeah.
That's interesting, because I sort of, I looked at all of the participants and I wondered what motivated them. And I looked at you and I was like, what's motivating Ross? I mean, look, you come at it having done a lot of work, a lot of personal work. You've thought about these strategies. You have a pretty broad network. Obviously, you came to LA and you knew more than one person who was there. So it's interesting to hear you motivated by that, inspired by that.
I think it's, a bartender knows the person that he's going to sell the next drink to is the person who bought the last drink. Right. And so somebody who invests in learning or invests in their network is more likely to invest in learning and invest in their network again. And I don't feel I'm done yet. I want to learn. I want to unlearn. I want to be open to those things rather than reach a position of arrogance or ego. As you said, ego comes down and compassion comes up. Is, on that journey of how can I, as Nick Nanton told me, life's in thirds: earn, learn, and serve. And they're all blended in, a crossover of all of these different things. Before I go to the last sort of final question, is there anything that you would have loved me to ask you that I haven't asked you?
No, I think this was a rich dialogue. The word that comes to mind now is curiosity, but that's a whole other conversation, right? Your love of humans is also a curiosity of people and what makes them tick. No, I mean, if you think it's appropriate, I'd love to highlight the program.
Yeah,
Probably.
I'd like to do three things then. One is your word. And so I'm just going to set them up and then I'll come back to them because I know the strings my questions are thoughts of consciousness. So one is your word, the opportunity to highlight a few parts of the program. And then my final piece that I ask every interview, which happens to be about curiosity. So let's start off with your word. What's your word on your My Intent bracelet, Ronen?
Maybe because we've said it a few times now in the last few minutes, but curiosity. I'm a deeply, deeply curious person. That really drives me. And the combination of high curiosity, low judgment is it's really the recipe for connecting with people because they feel that curiosity. They feel that you want to get to know them. And they respond to it. It's a visceral sensation. I'm also curious about so many other things that people find meaningless. I've had people say to me, Ronen, why are you thinking about this? Let me give you a quick example for your listeners and you come back to me with the answer to this, but why isn't there pork cheese? Just leave that with you. I thought that came to me. Pork is a huge meat industry. They're mammals, there's milk. Why isn't there? So anyway, this led me down a path for days where I, thank God for the internet, where I was able to find the answer. Anyway, I digress. I'm a deeply curious person. And so my word right now is curiosity.
What was showing up for me in that is the advanced level of curiosity I've observed you show, and something I'm trying to learn from because I have struggled, for example, many of you might who are listening, gone to conferences, right? And you're trying to meet lots of people. And I've suffered from being so curious, I can spend an hour, 2 hours with one human being. Right. And I'm like the tractor beam and I'm deep in the conversation. They're enjoying it. I'm enjoying it. And one of the unlearnings and reframes through Beyond Connections was to how can I maybe break out that curiosity over a period of time, especially in a high value setting like conferences where there's probably multiple people. And it's the fine balance between I'm talking to you, but I'm looking for the next person versus you're the one person and I'm not needing to spend an hour, but enough to get the next session, the next connection. So that was certainly a highlight for me to rewire my thinking of, no, if I go there and I get 3 really deep ones, that's good, versus, okay, I might get 10 that could then evolve. And that would be more valuable for me and my business, right?
Because you can always go deeper and explore that curiosity in another space.
Yes.
This was Keith's brilliance. This was one of the things that's so simple but brilliant, the deep bump, as he called it. And in the program, we tried to formalize it and tried to train it. And you're right, there's a happy balance, between how deep you get, especially at a conference. But you definitely do not want to be that person who's looking around. Whether you're spending minutes or 20 minutes with someone, give them the full attention. That's super.
The transitions and, it's one I'm finding the hardest. And I witnessed you, we were having the conversation, let's go and get a drink, after a minute or two and moving it around. And it felt comfortable. And of course, because I'm in the program, I see it differently, but in the natural course of things, that would be, that's a great way of how you do those things. So thank you for sharing that of your word. My highlight the program, a few elements of things, give you a little bit of space and time to do that because I'm a huge advocate of it. It's been a massive value for me personally. And I do want to share it with, people I love and care about in our community.
Yeah, it seems like your community are people that are aligned towards what we're doing and teaching.
Yeah.
No, I think we've spoken a bunch about this, Ross. This first experience was incredible, better in many ways than I could have imagined. The second one will set up to be even better. The sort of tinkerer in me is excited to sort of pull some levers and add some things and change some things. We will bring together 150 extraordinary people.
Amazing.
If you're someone who wants to invest in just how you build relationships systematically throughout your life, personal life, work life, this is a pretty extraordinary experience. We want people who are invested, bring in the energy. I don't know if you recall, one of the only things I asked people at the beginning of the program was just bring your give a damn. Like, give a damn. Get out of your comfort zone a little bit, and you see what happens as a result. So the program is enrolling now. If someone is at all interested or intrigued, pretty simple. Go to the website, fill out an application, and book a call with one of our enrollment advisors. They're wonderful. The call with them is essentially, they're giving you strategies and figuring out what your struggles are and challenges, and they'll help you understand whether it's going to have impact for you. Ultimately, we want people in the program who it will impact. And that's one of the reasons why this first cohort was so successful. We really went into, had that conversation with them. The website is connectedsuccess.com. And I hope to get a chance to have a conversation with anyone who's listening. I like to have a call and get to know everyone who comes into the program. So,
yeah, that's great. That's great. So connectedsuccess.com, we'll put it in the show notes and the links as well. And as we close out, the question I ask, which is linked to curiosity, and it is, when was the last time you did something for the first time? And what was it?
Well, I don't know if this was the last time, but I recently built an ice bath adjoining to my home, and I jumped into a pool of 38-degree water for the first time a couple of months ago. And I only say that because it's maybe the thing that's top of mind, because I did that just before our podcast. Boy, that's a great question. I'm a lot of first-time things. But you have to exercise that muscle as you get older, as you know, because there's that tendency to go, I definitely have that dimension of personality. There's, the 5 dimensions. One of them is, I don't know how it's articulated, but it's trying new things.
Openness. Openness to new experiences.
Versus being in control. Versus, we know people who, no, I'd like to control my environment, and that's a new thing. So, hopefully we can do some more new things together.
I've got no doubt. And what I've learned over these is, different ways of answering that question, right? Different thoughts. And we can do what's perceived as the same thing, but it's for the first time because we choose to see it through new eyes. As opposed to, I bungee jumped, or I did this big thing, because that's kind of the default way we'll try to answer it, try to articulate it. And what I want to encourage people to think about is the power of the naive mind, the power of going into something that feels autopilot to see it through naive eyes.
Beautiful.
And that opportunity for all of us to then uncover the beauty that lies within the norm or the mundane, or also the opportunity that lies within, or the, no, I don't want to do that anymore. Just because I did it yesterday. So if we go in with this curiosity, go in the newness, the first time, the naive mind opens up an opportunity for discovery and new choice and new thought. So I want to thank you.
Child's mind.
Yeah.
Asking questions all the time.
Beautiful. Thank you. I look forward to many firsts together, hanging out, growing our businesses together, and having an adventure along the way. And I don't know that I'll join you in the ice bath, because my tolerance for cold water is not good, but my co-founder does it every day. So thank you. Deep gratitude, not only for coming on the show, but also all the care and attention you've taken personally in me and other people in the community is not unnoticed.
Ross, it's been a pleasure having you as a part of Beyond Connections. You brought such an incredible energy and a wisdom and an insight to it. And I look forward to growing this community with you. So thank you.
Do you have the level of adaptability to survive and thrive the rapid changes ahead? Has your resilience got more comeback than a yo-yo? Do you have the ability to unlearn in order to reskill, upskill and break through? Find out today and uncover your adaptability profile and score, your AQ. Visit AQai.io to gain your personalized report across 15 scientifically validated dimensions of adaptability. For a limited time, enter code PODCAST65 for a complimentary AQME assessment. AQai, transforming the way people, teams, and organizations navigate change. Thank you for listening to this episode of Decoding AQ. Please make sure you subscribe on your favorite podcast directory, and we'd love to hear your feedback. Please do leave a review and be sure to tune in next time for more insights from our amazing guests.